237, and we're finally getting down to the end of the Italian horror and Giallo marathon. I know I've said that quite a bit over the last few months, but this time it's true. After this Giallo review, I have one more, and then that's it until my copy of Nothing Underneath and Too Beautiful to Die, the new Blu-ray of that comes in. And then that's it, hopefully till Christmas. There's a few I asked for that, see if I get, then maybe I'll do those. But this is one I picked up earlier this month. This is a new release, and it is 1971's The Designated Victim from Mondo Macabro. Not to be confused with The 10th Victim, which is another Giallo. I'm glad Mondo Macabro put this out, because I think the only other way to get this, at least that I know of, is Shameless Films, which they put out good releases too. And now that I have a region-free player, because I'm pretty sure most of those are at least region 0, but anyway, it's also known as Slam Out, and it was directed by Maurizio Lucidi, which, that name sounds familiar. Excuse me. Oh, he was assistant director to Pier Paolo Pasolini, Gospel According to St. Matthew, and mostly known for spaghetti westerns. No other films that I recognize, but screenplay was by Fulvio Gicapali, Fabio Carpi, and Luigi Malerba. But the story was by Augusto Caminito, Maurizio Lucidi, Aldo Lado, who directed a few Giallo that I actually really like. I believe he directed I know he did Who Saw Her Die, and I know he directed Night Train Murders, which I was never the biggest fan of. That's not a Giallo. Stars Thomas Millian, Pierre Clementi, Ottavio Alessi, and with cinematography by Aldo Tonti, and music by Louis Enriquez Bacalov and New Trolls. Now, this is one of many a Giallo. Obviously, one of the biggest influences on Giallo, apart from film noir and stuff like that, is Alfred Hitchcock. And a story that Hitchcock had adapted, that a number of Giallo films have done their own version of, is Strangers on a Train. I know there's been a number of them. The only one that's coming to mind as of right now would be the more recent Dario Argento film, Do You Like Hitchcock? Which, if you saw my review for that, I was not a fan of. This is a much a better movie than Do You Like Hitchcock. The cover kind of makes it look more like a Poliziotteschi film, which is actually what I was expecting. But this is one of those, I'm not sure what you would call them, kind of stalker movies, kind of single white female cable guy type movies, where, you know, the two friends, one proposes these strangers on a train idea. I'll kill your wife if you kill my brother. And then before this guy can really give a definite answer, the other guy goes ahead and does it. And then he just keeps popping up, stalking him, and kind of really laying the groundwork for the police to look at him and just bring the world down on his head until he upholds his end of the bargain. So, a very interesting way to do a giallo. From there, you're probably thinking, well, what's the twist? There is a twist that I did not see coming. This literally is the last scene of the entire film. And I'm actually going to have to flip open to this part of Troy Howarth's book because there's really not much about this film online. Which, I knew that name sounded familiar. Thomas Millian. Don't Torture a Duckling. That's where I had seen Thomas Millian before, and he had quite the career in spaghetti westerns and Poliziotteschi films. And side note, he was a student of Lee Strasberg, so he was a method actor. He might have even been there at the same time as Al Pacino. For those that don't know, Al Pacino Lee Strasberg trained Al Pacino, and he was Hyman Roth in Godfather 2. Now, one thing I noticed about Thomas Millian, and a better example than the stalking really ruining someone's life, was single white female still, because this guy really keeps preaching about friendship to Thomas Millian. Cable Guy was just the next thing that came to my mind, but The Hitcher, which is kind of fitting because Thomas Millian, there are some scenes where he does look kind of like C. Thomas Howell, like an Italian C. Thomas Howell, which the other guy, the Count, the one that's proposing and really pushing the dual murder idea, Pierre Clementi, who passed away in 1999, he reminded me of, he's kind of like a very eccentric, well, he's already eccentric, but like Russell Brand, like Russell Brand mixed with Tiny Tim. But as the plot went along, I thought he looks like he could be the brother of Lila from season 2 of Dexter, which that's also very fitting because that's essentially what he turns into. He turns into this kind of Lila type character. But yeah, I was actually very surprised by this movie because normally ones that are kind of more Poliziotteschi, which this one is not, but or actiony, which this one really isn't up until the climax. I'm not always the biggest fans of, and they're the ones that I'm usually kind of least excited about going into, and that's what I thought I was getting myself into before I realized it was going to be more of this. Yeah, I don't know if I really can call it like a stalker type movie, but that's how it plays out. And yeah, I was very impressed by it. But basically, so Thomas Millian plays, which I had to bring the cast up because I had already forgotten his name. Stefano. He plays a guy named Stefano who he's married to this woman named Louisa, who owns this, I think it's some sort of designer company, and it's her business. And when she married him, he was like an aspiring designer. Now he's very successful, but she's a very kind of demeaning, just not a very nice wife. And he really wants a divorce from her. He wants to sell his shares and just like get away from her. He also has a mistress named uh, Fabiana, played by Katia Christine, and his wife Louisa will not have anything to do with him selling the shares or even really divorcing. I think she kind of not really gets off, but it seems like she thrives on kind of putting him in his place and reminding him how important she is to him and how she's the one that got him to where he is. And it just so happens that one night, while on a date with Fabiana or Fabienne, well, first, they're just walking around and they see this blanket of handmade crafts, like bracelets and necklaces. And he picks up this one necklace that it's like the number 12 or like a clock pointing to 12. And then Pierre Clementi's character, Count Matteo, comes up and just picks it up, gives it to him, and says, "It's yours." And then throughout the day, they keep running into him. They see him at the casino, and then it takes place in Milan, so they got to take a boat through the canal. He offers to take Stefano and Fabienne back to their place via boat. And this is when he tells them, like, "Oh, we met 3 times today. The 4th time will be the decision." And he's very cryptic, but he's also very invasive, always asking him, very personal questions, and really wants to know everything about this guy. And Stefano's not very standoffish. He kind of realizes this guy's kind of pushing his boundaries. But then he goes back home and gets in another argument with his wife about the shares. He goes to meet Matteo again, and this is when he presents the idea of, hey, I think he says something about how murder is one thing he hasn't really experienced before, but would like to. And when he goes to meet Matteo this time, they're walking around outside. He like pulls a pet rat out of his pocket, and he's just like petting it as they're walking. So he says, "I can kill your wife, but you got to kill my brother. My brother's always been out to get me. He wants to destroy me." And Stefano never really gives an answer. He's actually kind of blowing him off in ways. And then there's a scene with him and his wife out on a boat, and she's just kind of nagging him and belittling him. She even says, like, "Hey, do you think, right now you're probably thinking about the boat capsizing because you can swim and I can't?" And he's just kind of stonewalling her. And finally he decides to go through with the sale himself, but forge her signature. And so he kind of gets what he needs in place. He has Fabienne go stay in Paris for a little bit, which that part I'm not 100% sure as to why. But he goes home, and she already knows everything. She knows about the sale. She knows about Fabienne and everything, because flowers were sent. These 24 lilacs were sent with a note from Matteo kind of explaining everything, which is probably foreshadowing that it wasn't an accident. So she kicks him out. He goes to stay somewhere else. He's with some other woman that he found who had a hard time finding a hotel. And the next morning, finds out his wife's been murdered, strangled. And now Matteo is hoping he will hold his end of the bargain and keeps, one keeps popping up everywhere he is, and has already pre-planned that he might do that. So he's really kind of working the investigation from afar and leaving hints and evidence and setting up traps for him to walk into and for police to find, to really make him the prime suspect of his own wife's murder. And it's not like he can go to the cops to say, hey, this guy is like conspiring murder with me, because he's also a criminal. He's not completely innocent. He forged his wife's a signature. And it all builds up to a pretty well-crafted, tense climax, like the last 5 minutes. But, sorry, I'm stuttering. I'm really tired. But, it's very well shot. Great shots along Milan, very well acted. I mean, Pierre Clementi, you really get as just this psychotic, obsessed guy that will really do whatever he needs to get his way. But also, I don't want to say flamboyant about it, but he's very, I guess eccentric is the right word. And there are some homoerotic undertones, like kind of the way he approaches and the way he acts around Stefano, which I've read some reviews that said, it could have led to some blatant homophobic scenes, but it never does. Like there's a scene where Matteo is describing to him how, where, and when he should commit the murder of his brother. And when he's all done, he just walks over to a stereo, turns it up, and it's like the ending to some classical piece, and he just like, I thought that was a nice touch. But yeah, totally buy his character. And just the way it sets up how helpless Stefano is. Like, there's even scenes where he's talking to the inspector and just he's like sunken in his seat, and all he can say is, it wasn't me, it was Matteo. It just reminded me so much of like C. Thomas Howell in The Hitcher, when he's just at the end of his rope. He has nothing left to explain. All he can just keep saying is, it's this guy. He did very well with his performance as well. Those two really help. I mean, it is a slow burn. It's a little slower than your typical Giallo, I felt. It does take a while to even get to the death of his wife. And then even a little further until things start going really south and start seeing Matteo for what he really is. But the performances of those two really make it, very enjoyable. Yeah, I was just very impressed by this movie. The twist is a very simple one. I'm not gonna have much to say after spoilers, which is kind of a relief, because the twist is really like a one-shot thing. Like, no long exposition of motive or why or any of that, but there are plenty of puzzle pieces and breadcrumbs where he explains how he can totally fuck this guy's life up. Like, how he never told the inspector about the other woman because, one, he felt shame, and he didn't want to bring that other woman into it. But as soon as he does, that's when this woman can't be found, and she's already been taken by Mateo. Or, when he realizes that this toll booth that he went through at the exact time his wife was killed, and he actually had to go through the toll booth twice. He couldn't find the ticket in his car. Mateo already went through his car, and just this sort of force to be reckoned with, stalker type films, and we haven't really seen that in Giallo. So it was a very this late. I think this is my 76th Giallo film I've reviewed since June. This is my 91st Giallo review overall. It's kind of refreshing to see one this different, and yeah, I was very impressed by it. The cinematography, very, very well shot. I can't think of anything that was really stylish or memorable as far as camera tricks or the way anything was really pulled off. The music, I'd probably say the music isn't anything to write home about. There's nothing that sticks out to me. And yeah, the story is kind of derivative. I mean, it's obviously strangers on a train. So this is very much a performance-driven film. It is a slow burn, but once it gets to a certain point, it doesn't stop, and then the climax is very tense. But I'm gonna get into spoilers now. But yeah, if you like movies like The Hitcher or A Single White Female and Giallo, definitely check this out. And definitely gonna be looking into more Mondo Macabro releases. I have a couple, but yeah, I'm definitely going to see what else they have planned. Hopefully they get more from Shameless or other hard-to-find ones. But yeah, with that, really liked this movie. Could get into spoilers, so. So yeah, right when it comes down to the very last thing that can save Stefano's ass is the toll booth ticket and the statement from this other woman that he was with at the hotel, but can't find the ticket, can't find the woman, and Mateo has managed to find and steal both. He goes to Venice, and that's when because he also wants to. Stefano wants to keep the other woman kind of on the DL so that Fabienne doesn't find out about her. But when he gets home, Fabienne asks him, who's Christine? Because Mateo called or stopped her outside and said, if he wants Christine, he has to come see me in Venice. So, just keeps digging the hole deeper for him, and just when you think he can't get any more helpless, there's just more that just he's able to fuck with him with. Another way he does that is with jewelry, which is after this. But he gets to Venice, and he tells him, hey, the ticket's ripped in half, but I can give it to you, and I'll give you Christine. And he tells her where Christine is, which is across the canal on the roof of a church. And he shows it by saying, look through the one circle on the stained glass window. And see, she's in between these two angels up by the dome. And he says, that's where you need to stand on this day at 12 o'clock sharp. There's already a ticket for you to get there's some storage locker for you to get this high range rifle. That's where you're gonna sit. and you're gonna aim through that circle in the window because my brother's gonna be sitting here for lunch. Then you're gonna shoot him. And he doesn't want to do it. He's more willing to work with police. He even tells police that you know, he killed my wife. Of course, they don't believe him. They're willing to do anything they can to figure him for it and get the confession out of him because they don't believe there is a ticket. They don't believe there is a Christine. Oh, but when he went to go see him in Venice, he showed us some of his wife's jewelry, which Matteo said that he took some jewelry to make it look like a robbery, and then threw it into the lake when he got back home. But he has this one ring, and he says it was too beautiful to throw away, But I did hide them throughout your apartment, places only you would know about, which would further implicate you in the murder, showing that you hid them to make it look like a robbery. So there's this scene with him and with Stefano and Fabienne just tearing his apartment apart, trying to find this jewelry, and they can't find it until eventually he decides to look in a curtain rod. But just as he's about to look, the police show up and they have to flee, and that's when he decides that he's going to go through with it. But I said before that he kind of looked like he could be the brother of Lila and Dexter. That's because there's a scene that's kind of the turning point of the whole film, because the two have been pretty close friends, even after he admits that I killed your wife, they're still kind of fine with each other, or at least Stefano is kind of fine with him. But then eventually there's a scene where, Stefano is just very angry with him. And, Stefano's Matteo's trying to tell him, like, you and I are one. You're the true brother. And he's trying to, hold him. He, wraps his arms around and is like, look in the mirror. Now when you see you'll see just psychotic rants about how they're true brothers and, they're one. They were meant to find each other. It was just very much like a Lila type scene. But, so then Fabienne, because the reason why she came back from Paris early was because she got an urgent telegram, of course, from Matteo. She came back the day of the wife's funeral. And then she gets a bouquet of lilacs with a ring box with the ring that Matteo showed Stefano that he still had. So then when Fabienne is brought in for questioning as well, she's wearing the ring, which Stefano does tell her, if the police had seen that, it would have been all over, because that was one of the rings that was marked as stolen or missing. Of course, none of it's her fault, because she thinks Stefano was just sending her a gift. She's just an unknowing pawn in everything that Matteo's trying to do. So it's just each step that Stefano tries to take, Matteo's already two steps ahead of him. So finally, when he decides to go through with it, it's just non-stop buildup of just music, him going to the storage locker to get the rifle, then getting a boat across the canal to the church, climbing the church, getting, assembling the rifle, and of course the music is building up just as much. And then, I'm not sure who Fabienne is calling. It shows her running into a booth and calling someone. That part I did miss. But also the police closing in on him. So it's all these different things happening at once, and definitely the most tense part of the film, obviously, is the climax. It doesn't show Matteo or his brother at all during this, which I didn't even notice. And, you know, if this had not been as intense as it was, I might have noticed why is it not showing Matteo and his brother having lunch, and I would have thought about the twist more. But everything was so tense that I didn't even think about it, and it made the twist work. Because then by the time the bell chimes 12 times, and there's this giant statue with the hammer that hits the bell, it keeps cutting to that face of the statue with each hit, along with a close of him looking through the scope. And then finally he fires, and when he fires, we get the great shot of the birds, and then we see inside Matteo's apartment, and he's sitting by himself at that table. His brother's not there because his brother's not real. This whole time he's been trying to make a deal with someone to kill himself. And it's even foreshadowed from the very beginning, from their first encounter with the handmade crafts, where Matteo sees Stefano pick up the handcrafted 12 necklace, and just like when he gives it to him, it's like the locked eyes, and just you can see the look of just determination, and almost like I choose you. 12 o'clock. So from their very first encounter up until Matteo's death, it was very nice foreshadowing, even if you don't know it at the time, when you think back to it. And it ends there. Like, it freeze frames on Matteo's body with the bullet hole, and in credits. Doesn't say why, doesn't show what happens to Stefano, which is fine. Italian films do that a lot, but I was fine with that ending. But yeah, this is not the kind of film that I was expecting. I was expecting more of a Polizioteschi, more action type film, not the stalker gonna ruin your life one step ahead of you, you better do what I say type movie. And like I said, I had not seen that for Giallo. It was very different, and it looked great. This new 4K transfer, normally I don't say anything about that because I don't care about transfers or anything, but it looked awesome. And of course, the best part about the movie, the best part about the movie is the performances of the two leads. They both carried this movie wonderfully. And I love seeing just the sort of downfall of this friendship. With how close they are in the beginning, and then just how psychotic Matteo gets and how desperate Stefano gets. And the performances back it up great. So yeah, definitely surprised by this movie. This is not one that I was expecting. And great twist. And another great way to tell strangers on a train, because it's not, I need you to kill this person for me. It sounds that way, but really, it's, I need you to kill me myself. But, so yeah. Designated Victim, I put it off because I thought it was going to be something else, but I ended up really liking it. So, I got a couple more Giallo films, a couple more Italian horror films. Stay tuned for those, and thank you for watching.